Hi, thank you, Samuel. And can you see my slide?
Yes, very well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to present this paper, Informational Asymmetries and Interbank Competition Evidence from Branch Pruning, that's jointly written with Paolo Emilio Mistrulli, a colleague from Banca d'Italia. As usual for papers written by researchers from central banks, the view expressed in this paper are from the authors only. Now, what is this paper about? As you can infer from the title, this paper investigates if and how branch pruning, that is the closure of bank branches, has an impact on credit markets. And studying this issue has gained momentum because in the aftermath of the financial crisis, the number of branches has declined in many advanced countries. In the graph here, you can see that actually this graph ended in 2018, but actually the decline continued also in 2019 and in 2020. The increasing incidence of branch closings pushed raised concern about the possible adverse effect on credit asset of the declining branching, and also it pushed empirical studies on the impact of branch closings. Thanks to these empirical studies, we know that the clients of that after a branch closure, clients of the closed branch tend to switch banks. We also know that the lending to small businesses decline after branch closures. And moreover, from other studies, we know that firms switching bank after a branch closure do not obtain the switching discount that usually firm changing their main bank obtain. So the question now is why? What is behind this effect? Indeed, if we think about branch closures, actually nothing should happen, because it's true the branch closes, but the bank is still there. In a frictionless economy, branch closures would have no impact on credit market. However, we know that credit contracts are information intensive contracts, and because of this, banks screen and monitor to collect information, to collect a particular kind of information that is soft information. And if this soft information is gathered at branch level, as Herzberg, Liberti, and Paravicini say, and moreover, again, this soft information is difficult to transmit within the same bank, as Stein argues, then branch closures cause a loss of information for the bank that closes the branch. This may in turn reduce informational asymmetries between the bank inside the credit relationship and the bank outside the credit relationship. And so interbank competition may become fiercer. This means that borrowers from the closing branch should be more able to find a new match for the credit relationship, and also to substitute their bank, if this is true. To understand if this is the mechanism behind the reallocation, for which we have some evidence from other papers, we need to answer 4 questions empirically. The first one is, does the willingness to search increase after a branch closure? Why we need to answer this question? Because if soft information, and therefore the credit relationship, is branch specific, Therefore, once we have a branch closures, borrowers from this branch should rebuild their, let's say, relationship capital with another branch, even if of the same bank. This means that for these borrowers, searching for a new credit relationship and even substituting their banks is more probable, because for them there is already a damage due to the closure of the branch relative to other borrowers searching or other borrowers of the market. So to do so, we use data on the loan application from the credit register of Banca d'Italia. Second, if informational asymmetries between inside and outside banks reduce, we should also see that this loan application for borrowers coming from closing branch should have a higher probability of being accepted compared to other loan application for borrowers that should have a higher probability of being accepted compared to regular searchers. Here we use, again, data from the credit register to check if loan applications are accepted, and also to check if borrowers switch their main lender, their incumbent bank. Finally, but this part is still preliminary, we're going to look if firms switching after branch closures obtain the switching discount that has been found from other paper. To do so, we use information on individual loan rates priced by the Italian banks on credit lines. Using combining all these different data sources, we are able to have a picture of what is going on. And in particular, we are going to estimate this specification that you can see here, where we change the dependent variable according to the question we are going to answer. So we are going to use, for the first question I show you saw before, a dummy equal to 1 if at least a bank lodged an inquiry to the credit register about a borrower, and then a dummy identifying if the loan application is successful, and a dummy taking value 1 if firm terminates the old relationship after the creation of a new one. We are interested in the coefficient delta here. You can see my pointer? I hope so. So what we are going to estimate, actually the coefficient in which we are interested, is this delta tau here, that is going to measure the differential response of borrowers affected by the closures compared to other borrowers. These charts in the slide here give a visual overview of our results. The upper left chart report the estimated coefficient quarter by quarter of the model in which the dependent variable is the searching for a new bank. These coefficients capture the differential response of borrowers affected by the closures, by the branch closures, compared to other borrowers. We can see here that actually 0 correspond to the date of the branch closures. We can see here that actually borrowers affected by a closures search more for a new bank compared to other borrowers, and in particular they start to search for a new bank even before the branch closes, as soon as they are aware that their bank, their incumbent bank, will close the branch that's lending to them. This other graph here on the upper left side plot again the coefficient we estimated quarter by quarter, but here the dependent variable is the if the loan application was successful. So the report the dependent variable is a dummy taking value 1 when the loan application was successful. Again, this is the differential response of borrowers affected by the closures. And here again, we can see that for these borrowers, the probability of seeing their loan application accepted is higher compared to other borrowers. Finally, in the graph on the center here, we have the differential response for the question of does borrowers from affected by the closures have a higher probability to switch banks? And again, the answer is yes, they have a higher probability, again, around the date of the closure. So now what we have here, this evidence is this evidence consistent with the story I told you before? And actually, if you think about it, it is, because the first graph just shows us that branches are pivotal for the lending relationship, and actually it suggests that the credit relationship is branch specific more than bank specific, because borrowers after a branch closures go on the market and search for a new bank. The second graph shows us that borrowers affected by the closures have a higher probability to be accepted by outside banks, by banks that are not with which they have no relationship ongoing. What does this mean? This suggests exactly that information asymmetries between the bank inside the credit relationship and the bank outside reduce. Why? Because if we think about when outside bank receive a loan application for a borrower that has a credit relationship with another bank, the outside bank doesn't know if that borrower is searching for new lending because he needs funding for investment, or she's searching for new lending because her inside bank, her incumbent bank, that's the bank that has more information about the borrower, doesn't want to finance that borrower anymore. So the outside bank, anytime that has to decide if accept or not a loan application, has this problem, this issue that's known in the literature as the winner's curse problem. That is that he can accept the loan application, but actually is accepting a client that the other bank is refusing. For these banks, for these borrowers coming from a closure of the bank branch, this issue is mitigated. Why? Because the outside bank knows that the borrower is searching for a new relationship because he experienced a loss in the soft information that they had constructed with the previous bank. It's a bit difficult to explain. I hope that I get the point.
Elena,
So that's why.
can we accelerate a bit more?
So that's why we. That's why we think that our results push in this direction, in the direction in which the asymmetry of information is reduced. So our interpretation points to the fact that anything good, that soft information is driving our results. The problem is that we don't have a measure of soft information. Soft information is something that is difficult to measure, and we try to get a measure of soft information by using interest rate. In particular, this share of the interest rate that it's not we use the error in a loan pricing rule to try to proxy the soft information that's inside the interest rate. And we augment our previous model using this measure of soft information we have constructed. And we see that actually results are in line with our story. That is that Borrowers that rely more on soft information tend to search more for new relationship after a bench closures. Also for these borrowers, there is a higher probability to be successful in the searching after a closures, while we find no different path if we look at the switching.
So me to accelerate, Madalena.
Yeah, I have done. Because the last part is the one on the interest rate. I want just to show you that we look if they price different interest rate to switching loans. And what I think is the interesting part is that we find that some borrowers get an additional switching discount, but this discount just vanishes after around 3 years. So to sum up, our results suggest that credit relationships are branch specific, suggest that one branch closes, actually the informational asymmetries between banks reduces, and this is because the winner's curse problem is mitigated. So this evidence is consistent with the informational asymmetry hypothesis, and branch closures led to an informational loss for the incumbent banks. Thank you. Sorry for being late. Just 2 minutes.
That's fine, perfect. Just 2 minutes. Now we have, as mentioned before, Cyril Pouvel, head of the research unit of the research directorate. Many thanks, Cyril, for your time. So you have the floor now. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
And can you see my slides?
Yes, as well.
Perfect. Great. So good afternoon again. Many thanks to the EBA organizers for giving me the opportunity to discuss this very interesting paper. It's always a pleasure to participate in the annual EBA research conference. So I've been tasked with discussing this paper. My discussion will be made of 6 points. I will briefly summarize the paper and then talk about maybe the need to have a short theoretical model, discuss more precisely the empirical model, and then talk about policy implications before concluding. So first, let me summarize the main research question addressed by this paper. First, what is the impact of bank branch closures on interbank competition, the credit market, and the probability for a bank of looking for a new credit relationship? And I think that the paper makes important contributions to this question. First, I thought I found that the identification strategy was quite robust, as it is based on a difference in different approach and the interesting use of the heterogeneity between firms that borrow from closing branches, that will be the treated group of the experiment, and the other firms that will be part of the control group within, this is an important point, the same municipality. And then in terms of data, there is an interesting combination of data at individual level, taken from the National Credit Register, and granular fixed effect at the local level to control for local credit demand effects and firm-specific characteristics. So overall, I think the empirical strategy is robust. And let me briefly summarize the main findings. So banks branches do have a critical role for the acquisition of soft information on borrowers, and that's why closures lead to informational losses. Branch closures raise the probability that a borrower looks for a new lending relationship with a 2.2% higher probability. The benefit that a firm gets from switching bank after a branch closure is only, compared to normal switchers, is only temporary, as it vanishes after 3 years. And finally, there is a higher impact on more opaque corporate borrowers identified on the basis of a Z-score. So let me come to the first set of comments I have in terms of, I know that the paper is already long, but I think a short theoretical model would have been useful in introduction to better understand the net welfare effects of a bank closure and the terms of the trade-offs between increased interbank competition and the loss of soft information. Because my sense is that we didn't get all the story with your regressions. And more importantly, what are the consequences in terms of market imperfection, namely incentives, screening, moral hazard, and adverse selection. In terms of the empirical model, I've already talked about that, but the identification seems to me robust due to the inclusion of municipality times time fixed effects. But one point seems to be missing is the presentation of the parallel trend between the treated group and the control group before the closure. When you apply a diff and diff estimation, you need to present the parallel trend. We need to be reassured about that, and some evidence about that would have been useful. The crucial role of SMEs could have been more analyzed because this is the group which is the most likely to be impacted by soft information and lending relationship. I acknowledge that you took care of that by introducing a dummy variable to identify SMEs, but maybe you could have interacted it, this dummy, with the variable of interest, or you could have run the regression on a sample limited to SME lending. And maybe just a point, detail precision. How do you explain the low level of the R square of the equation, around 10% in the baseline estimation? How long do you have left, Samuel, please?
For 3 minutes. Perfect.
Okay, 3 minutes, perfect. Then maybe address the issue of the problems with the database that are recognized by the authors. First, their database doesn't include loan denials and acceptances reported in the credit register. So that's why they infer loan acceptances from the credit register through the observation of the appearance of a loan in the register after the firm application. But then this raises, I think you did your best with the data you have, but this raises the question as to what happens if the firm decides to drop its application on its own initiative in the meantime due to the disagreement with loan terms. And how do you treat undrawn credit lines? And can you identify available but undrawn credit lines in your data set? Because this could change the results. And maybe a point of clarification, do you have any information and statistics about the length of the application procedure? Another problem with the data set is that the lending branch is not observed in the credit register. And this is a problem for firms which are served by branches, staying on a different postal code from that of the firms. To circumvent this issue, the authors make the assumption that the closest branch makes the loan to the firm. But I think this assumption would be more reasonable if the sample was restricted to SMEs. Final points, in terms of policy implication, I would have appreciated reading some policy implication in terms of prudential supervision, banking competition policy, and banks' profitability assessment based on your results. So let me briefly conclude on 3 points. Overall, I think it's a very solid and interesting paper relying on a rigorous empirical strategy. The empirical findings could focus more on SME lending. And finally, as an extension, more work could have been done to explain the transmission channels between branch closures and the imperfections of the credit market, as well as some policy implications. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Cyril. Madalena, is it possible for you to try to kind of answer or inform us in 2 minutes? Because we still have 3 or 4 very good questions as well from the audience. Let's see if
Okay. So thank you, Cyril. There was a very nice discussion. Many thanks. As for the suggestion about the theoretical model, yes, that's a very good point. Actually, we thought we are thinking about to add a model because, as maybe can be shown also by my presentation, it's really difficult to explain what is the mechanism we think it's behind our results. So with a theoretical model, maybe we can really help. As for the parallel trend, actually we don't explicitly talk about that because we think that the graph we show with the quarter by quarter coefficient estimated, where we see that actually it's zero far from the range around the branch closures, is a kind of parallel trend analysis. So we relied until now on that analysis for this point. Yes, as SME lending, we are for sure doing it. We are going to try to see if something how our results are affected. Loan application and about the length of the loan application and other robustness, we can add them. And also, okay, yes, we will think more about what is the mechanism and interaction with other imperfection, with the credit market imperfection. That's actually, this is a good point that we can exploit in some way in the paper. And Samuel, how
yes.
we wanna
Yes.
how we wanna go with the question on the chat?
Let me give you the questions.
Okay.
Okay. So one question from Christina Sella. Do you have information about employees of the closed branches? If soft information is collected by people with which clients have recurrent contacts, then it may be reasonable to assume that customers may follow them to a new branch or to a new bank.
Actually, we don't know. You mean Christina means that maybe the head of a branch is moved to the other branch and therefore he bring with him all the clients. Unfortunately, we don't have this information about the name of the branch, except that for a small sample, and maybe we can add some robustness using also this information for this small sample for which we have this info, for which we have the name of the head of the branch.
Another question from Spiros Paliknis. Do the cost savings from closing a branch compensate for the lost business? So the banks probably choose which branches to close based on this criterion. So it would be nice to see if their choices are successful.
This is a good question. We don't have such an analysis for now, but we can try to add something like that to see if there is a kind of strategic behavior of the bank in choosing which branch to close.
Another
Thank you.
question from Michela Rankan. What are the effects of branches closures on banks' market power?
You mean that maybe we can add some measure in the regression of the bank's market power in that municipality or something like that to see if maybe this is something that can be added to the suggestion before. So to look if there is also a loss in the banks in the market power of the banks once one close the branches. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
And
another good suggestion.
And the last question, Elvira Metcalf. Has the model considered closures caused by consolidation? So I guess this may have a different impact on competition.
Yes, actually, we have a kind of robustness in the paper in which we use closures from merger and acquisitions. We do this because we assume that closures from merger and acquisition are in some way more endogenous compared to other type of closures. And we also have different analysis in which we look only to closures due to merger and acquisitions and closures that are not related with merged acquisitions, and actually the effect is almost the same in both the cases, where with coefficients that are larger for the sample in which we don't have consolidations.
Many thanks, Madalena. Many thanks, Cyril. Very interesting discussion and paper.
Thank you.